This is why I tell people to avoid building on a slopy land. You see, the cost of developing a slopy land is times 4 of what it would take to develop a flat land. Now come with me, I believe in practical experience and details, and you will see why it is very expensive developing a slopy land. Now you see, this information is very important for real estate developer. If you're into real estate development, this will do you good. The information I'm giving you here will help you in saving so much money, and it will help you from being stuck with so many abandoned projects. You see, most of these things are not on paper. You can't even find them anywhere on the internet. The only time you will get to know of them is when you fall into that trap and the reality will be done on you. You don't just go for a land because of its position or because it is a juicy project. No, if you don't understand some of these parameters, you will end up being stuck with an abandoned project. Because you see, the cost of building on a slopy land is always not funny. It is always like times 4 of what it would take you to build on a flat land, which is exactly what we are stuck with here. This reinforcement that you are seeing here alone, we spent 30 million naira on this reinforcement. We're always out for the best quality, and so we use the best grade of reinforcement, which is TMT. For those of you who are into construction, you will understand with me. Most of what we have on ground here is Y20, Y16, and Y12. You get, so you will now understand with me why the whole of this reinforcement is costing 30 million naira, and this is just for the reinforcement. Now don't forget, we've not talked about the concrete, we've not talked about the formwork, and we've also not talked about the cost of labor for this work. If you put all of these costs together, you will see that we are spending over 50 million naira on a small foundation like this. Some times ago, I made a video explaining to you why it is very expensive building on a slopy land. Now take a look at this foundation. Technically, it is called a raft foundation. It's usually employed in a place where the bearing capacity of the soil is very low. What this means is the strength of the soil where the building project is to be executed is very low, and so it cannot carry a building using your nominal foundation, which is the pad foundation. Most of the foundations that you see, they are pad foundation, and they are usually cheap and more economical compared to this, which is the raft foundation. Now, there are so many dangers associated with executing a building project on a land that has a very low soil bearing capacity. One of such dangers is your building will sink and eventually it will collapse. And so you need a foundation like this to be able to mitigate the effect of the non-uniform deformation. And that is why the raft foundation is usually employed for places like this. Now, raft foundation is very common for places like your swampland and also reclaimed land, like in this particular instance, where you have to import foreign materials to the site to achieve certain level, maybe to reduce the slope of the place. And this is most common in places that have very slopy land, like this particular one. One other thing that makes building on a slopy land very difficult, very expensive, more especially in places like Abuja, infrastructures such as your drainage system and the stormwater system, they are all in front, and then the land is sloping to the back, and even the back is another person's plot, and so you can't drain your water to the back, and you are not even allowed to put a soakaway. You've got to collect all your waste to the central sewage system. Now in this particular instance, the land is sloping to the back by 8 meters. The difference in height between the front and the back is 8 meters. 8 meters is no jokes, and that's more than 2-story buildings, which is why we decided to introduce a basement floor. Now look at this other plot. It is the same challenge they are having. If you look at the front, if you look at it carefully, the infrastructures are in front and their land is sloping to the back by about 8 meters. So how do you drain the water? Looking at the fact that even the back where the land is sloping to is another person's property. So you can't even drain the water to the back. You can't put a soakaway there. So at the end of the day, for you to be able to drain your waste out, you have to fill up the entire place. You have to fill up the land and position your building in such a way that you can drain all the waste coming from the property into the central sewage system. And you see, this is damn expensive. This project is a luxury project. It is lift enabled. It is a 7-bedroom fully detached duplex, and it is located in Gusapi. This place is actually Gusapi. Gusapi is one of the most luxury places in the heart of Abuja. It was designed for 1% of the 1% of Abuja residents. You can see the environment. And so even if we spend so much in developing this property, because of its location and because of its position, people are willing to pay for it. Take for instance, somebody has paid for this unit, and one of this unit is going for 700 million. Even though it is expensive carrying out the project, you still be able to get your money back with a certain level of profit. But you see, you can't do this for places like Lugbe, Kubwa, or even Kuje, Gwagwalada, and Buhari. You know why? The people in these particular places are not willing to pay this heavy amount of money for a building. And so in places like that, if you carry out a project like this, you will be at loss, which is why I always advise people, if you must carry out a project like this, make sure it is in one of the luxury places in the heart of Abuja, where people who understand the value are ready to pay for it. In such place, you will not be at loss. But if you go to the satellite towns and carry out this project, you are spending 50 million naira on a small foundation like this, that project will eventually be an abandoned project, and you will eventually be at loss. So it is always advisable to avoid slopy land, because slopy lands will do you no good. They will eat up your money, more especially when there are places where people really don't understand the value and people are not willing to pay you heavily for such development. Stay away from places like that. So stay with me for more of this. I remain your guy, Dave, Abuja's most influential real estate consultant.